Oh my god, there were so many Australian references in this episode. G'day cheeky dogs, my name's Margie and I'm an Australian currently living in America. And today we are going to be breaking down the episode Show and Tell from Bluey Season 3C.
This episode of Bluey is called Show and Tell.
I'm going to be going through all our traditional Easter eggs like our long dogs, tennis balls, pineapples, as well as the insane amount of Brisbane locations that they showcased in this, the cameos, the Simpsons references, and of course the more meta references about Bluey's family and the previous episode Tina. So if you love Bluey as much as I do, don't forget to hit that like button down below, as well as that subscribe button and that bell for notifications so you know whenever I release any other Bluey content or do any live streams. So let's start off with the traditional Easter eggs first then. We had 3 tennis balls in total. We had one that was in the dining room down in the bottom left corner, and then we also had 2 in Bingo's kindergarten. We also then had 2 long dogs in this episode as well. One was a little bit more visible than the other. The first one was on the electrical box as we saw Bandit going past, and I'm going to talk more about this electrical box because it exists in real life as well as a long dog on the top surfboard at the surfer's house. Now this long dog is, yeah, definitely a long dog. It's about as vague as the one that we saw in Stickbird as well. So, but we also have the pineapple as well in this episode. It is on the store sign that we see as Bandit drives past. So, speaking of Bandit driving, let's talk about those locations. So, as Bandit is driving aimlessly around Toowong, and yes, we're very sure it's Toowong, a lot of those locations are sort of around the Toowong to Paddington area. There was just so many cool little details in this, and kudos to the animation team because this was such an amazing scene. So the first main building that we can recognize, we've already seen before actually in Daddy Drop Off, and that is like the green building that they drive past. This is actually the Cheesecake Shop and Cartridge World, which is on Waterworks Road. We also get to see the little bus stop lady there, and the bus stop also looks the exact same as well. We then also see them driving past Hammer Barn, of course, referencing the episode Hammer Barn, but in real life that is also called Bunnings. It's basically the Australian version of Home Depot. We then also see them going to Toowong Cemetery, and again, we know it's definitely Toowong Cemetery. We can tell from the gates at the front, as well as a lot of the dog statues in the background match the ones that you can see sort of when you first go into Toowong Cemetery as well. Another classic Toowong building is the Hutchinson building. We see Bandit driving around the corner of that, and it's such a cool little detail. So this building actually underneath has a car wash called Hoppy's, and it's a frog, but instead in the Blueyverse they decided to make it a green chameleon instead. And then of course we have the electrical box and Stafford State School. So in real life, I actually went to this last year and did a couple of videos filmed there, but the Ludo Studio animators actually went to Stafford School and they painted all around this electrical box with different scenes from Bluey. And there was even a long dog on there as well. But what's really cool is we see Bandit driving past Stafford State School, which again is in a totally different location to where they are, so no wonder they got lost. But of course, on top of this electrical box is where we can see the long dog, and we have the front picture of Bluey and Bingo hugging, as well as the side picture of their house, which of course brings up the idea of like the metaverse. Like I made a theory ages ago about Bluey being basically like a Kardashian, that their family is actually in a reality TV show and that's what the show is. And it's kind of like proving me right. This is ridiculous how accurate it's starting to get in all these like inverse sort of meta jokes. But we do have a few unknown things with the locations. So the first one is 16 Pelton Drive. Not surprisingly, that address doesn't exist in Brisbane. There's like 16 Pelton Street. That's like a 20-minute drive away, and I don't think that's what this place is. It's just a random residential house. But I'm wondering if Pelton maybe is another Easter egg or 16 for something else. Same along with on our green building, we have another kind of code. It's C32699109. And also when we see Bandit driving past, we also see Dellen Lane. These 3 things I couldn't figure out, guys. I even asked on Reddit as well, and no one else on Reddit can seem to figure it out either. So if you have any idea, let me know in that comment section down below. These are our 3 mysteries for this episode. I do want to point out though, some are just like the really cool little extra details that they put into these scenes. So you can also see like the veterinary clinic with the paw print on it, as well as a little pizza store as well. And then some of like the cameos is we see the dog and her son from Dance Mode, which also looks a lot like Rich J from the 1980s flashback scene in Fairy Tale. Now, speaking of cameos, let's talk about the real life cameos in this. We had 2 cameo actors in it. The first one being Mick Fanning, who is a famous Australian surfer. He, of course, was voicing our surfer dog who was selling the surfboard to Bandit. And I love that we see like just how much Bandit loves surfing. Like we already know he has a surfboard because we saw that in Bob Bilby, and we see him like reading surfing magazines before too. So I love that they kind of keep referencing that he does love surfing. Also as well, the design on the surfer dog looks a lot like Mick Fanning in real life, which is really cool, even down to the detail of his iconic black watch that he wears all the time, even when surfing. The other voice actor is Shauna Corrigan, who is the Sat Nav voice actor.
Turn left.
Now, she was also actually the voice actor for the Satnav in the episode Explorers as well, but she doesn't seem to be a famous actress or anything like that, so I'm assuming that she's probably just a friend of Joe Brumm or someone at Ludo Studios. Now, let's talk about the Simpsons reference / the blah 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 reference.
Blah 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 blah. Solitary confinement.
Blah 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 blah.
So this was just such a funny joke, and it's just so true that like kids will switch off if you talk too much to them, and I love just like that message within this episode. And of course, both Chili and Bandit saying blah blah blah. Chili's lines made like a little bit more sense. She was talking about like the crab.
Blah 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 blah.
Skeleton. You see, blah 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 skeleton, blah 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 mitochondria.
We have no idea why Bandit ended up in like solitude at the end of his talk, but I do think this is a Simpsons reference. We've had Simpsons references before, but this straight away reminded me of like when Bart gets an F in a class and Homer just can't focus.
One of his problems may be his short attention span, which can lead to blah 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 blah.
I called blah 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 cleaning toilets, blah 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 blah. Solitary confinement.
Now, some other kind of little kids jokes, of course, is Statue World for the cemetery.
Statue World.
It's really cute to see like through kids' eyes, especially through Bingo's as well, just how kids view some of these like more morbid places. Yeah, it's a graveyard or cemetery, but she sees it as Statue World, and I love that they kind of added in that childlike kind of joke to this. Now, we've gone through the Aussie Brisbane locations in this, so let's go through some of the other Australian references. We have a bunch of like Aussie words. We have g'day, we have good nick, which of course in Australian means good condition. We have hang on a sec, which second sec, that's what that means, as well as satnav, which of course is GPS, and the tomato sauce, aka the ketchup. This was such like, again, a really funny little detail, because this is again is exactly what tomato sauce bottles look like in Australia, even down to like the red and blue lids for detailing between the regular one and the low sugar, low sodium one. We also have a bunch of Australian animals and some other animal references as well. We see the kookaburra as well as the cockatoo in this episode. We also find out that the crab claw that Bingo has, which is of course from Stickbird, our last episode, is a blue coral crab, which is a very common crab in Australia, but also one of the largest ones as well. So I'm surprised they didn't actually make the nipper a lot bigger. We also see a zebra pen in the background, and of course this reminded me of the episode Onesies, where zebras of course used to be Bluey's favorite animal. We also have some just really cute little funny moments with the animation in this as well. Everything from Buddy picking his nose in Bingo's kindy class, to Chili sticking her tongue out at Bandit, or even just the girls' reactions when they're trying the tomato sauce for the first time at the table. Just these extra details that they've been adding in a lot more for this season just totally make the episode so much more richer and fuller, and so funny too. Now, of course, we do have that kind of meta fourth wall break where they're talking about the episode Tina, and Bandit is really disappointed that the kids didn't learn their lesson in that. And I definitely want to do a bit more of an in-depth breakdown about this idea of show versus tell, because it's a big concept when you're also filmmaking as well. And I feel like that's the line they were trying to go with this, kind of similar to what they did with Curry Quest, with how that's like a filmmaking like procedure of how you would write a script. This is a very big thing in the film industry of you should always show something, don't tell people about it. Because it's boring when you tell people about it. They'll switch off because they don't have enough attention. Exactly like what they were saying in this episode.
Pro tip, keep it simple. Kids switch off if you talk too long.
I did love that they kind of referenced Tina, and I'm really excited for the Behind Bluey podcast that'll come out today. I want to know what Joe Brumm was thinking when he decided to reference Tina within this episode, because Bluey hasn't really done that before. So once I know his thoughts on it, I'm going to do a whole video about it, and I'll have that released either Monday or Tuesday. But overall for me, I loved this episode. I thought it was so much fun, and I loved just how many Australian references and especially Brisbane references were in it. I used to live in Brisbane, and so for me, 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a lot of fun. I did think that they were maybe going to go somewhere a little bit darker with the cemetery, but I'm kind of glad that they didn't. I liked the lesson that they were trying to tell us in this one, and I just thought it was so fun. So cheeky dogs, let me know in that comment section down below, how many long dogs would you give this episode out of 5, as well as what were your favorite moments from this episode too? And do you know what any of these things mean? Like I said, I will have a full breakdown talking about the message of this episode, as well as the Tina reference coming out after the Behind Bluey podcast comes out, with any other extra details that they tell us about in that too. So don't forget then to hit that subscribe button, as well as that bell for notifications, so you know when those videos come out. Otherwise, cheeky dogs, I have picked you out a few other videos that maybe you would like to watch, and I will see you all in another video. Mwah! Bye!